And I'm alive and I'm awake and I'm here live tonight on Christmas Eve. Can you believe that? Yes, This is Chuck Horton from bringing to you live your Christmas Eve edition of Double Crossed Radio. And I gotta wonder what some of you guys in chat are doing. Tuned in to talk radio on UCY Radio. And we love Jordan Page too. And by the way, you guys can support Jordan Page buying his new single release, Arm Yourselves. It's you can get it on iTunes. You can get it on MPG. It's MP3, excuse me. You can get I got a mouthful of peanuts just from the music faded out. I'll be okay in a minute or two. Anyway, you can get this at Jordan Page's website. He's got links to the place where you can buy it. It's only $2, and it's an amazing. It's about 8 minutes worth of music. It's got the Arm Yourself song, and then the final battle, or World War III, or whatever it's called. It's amazing 4-minute guitar solo. It's just fabulous. I love listening to that. So anyway, that's enough for that. And I thought I would also give a shout out. I got in the mail this week. I got my Healing Our World, Mary Ruart, PhD. As some of you listen frequently might remember, she was a guest on our show back in November. Amazing woman. And this is a fabulous book, and it's going to be one of my Christmas presents I deliver tomorrow. And last year, one of my Christmas presents were a set of books from something. Let's see, who was that? This was from Dana Martin, and it was about unschooling. And I gave one copy to each of my children because they're raising my grandchildren. And the books at first were kind of, because it's a radical concept, they didn't really, to get in the spirit of it right off the bat. But as the year wore on, they had read the books. They started to really see things happening that would say, well, this is kind of what that lady was talking about in this book. And so here we are a whole year after they had received these books, and they're really encouraging their children to be more creative. It's not a clean up your room or you won't get any dessert after supper or any of that sort of thing. They're trying to allow their children to grow. And I'm seeing my grandchildren are just such wonderful kids, and they're all just turning out so great, and they're all growing in the way they should, because their parents are doing a fabulous job now and they were doing a great job before, but I think they've really picked up the things out of that book that they needed to read for themselves, and they were different for each set. And I couldn't be more happy and proud of my grandchildren. They're just awesome kids. Anyway, I was just going to kind of throw out some stuff. Last week I talked about, by the way, I was almost late getting here today because, as some of you know, I have a liquor store, and we stayed open until 6:30 on Christmas Eve, and we were just swamped with people all day long, and it was hard getting out of there. Thank goodness we have tomorrow off. But anyway, so I'm a little bit, I had thought out what I wanted to talk about tonight earlier in the morning, and usually I spend about a half an hour before the show kind of making some notes to make sure I hit all the things right. And so if it seems a little bit, it doesn't smoothly flow from one thing to the next, well, that's my excuse. I'm going to stick with it. Anyway, I thought what I would talk about a little bit was, recently there's been a lot of people, including ourselves and myself, talking about the coming economic collapse. I mean, I think that's something that is pretty hard to deny is going to happen. It's our dollar is going to collapse for sure. There's no way they cannot collapse the dollar. It is basically almost worthless now. It's lost over 99% of its value since the creation of the Federal Reserve. It's not really money, it's currency. Money has value, and the dollars have no value. The only thing that's keeping it afloat is the fact that it's continuing to be a world trading currency, and other nations are starting to pick up on that. Now, one of the nations that picked up on it a few years back, they were going to back a currency and actually back a money with gold and use it for trading within the Islamic nations in northern Africa and the Middle East and out into Pakistan, that area, kind of the part of the world where Islam is predominant. And they were going to use this currency as a trading currency within those boundaries. The fact that a lot of those countries produce much of the oil for the rest of the world made this kind of a problem for some of the ruling elites. And so they took down this guy, Muammar Gaddafi in Libya. And the person that was kind of spearheading the U.S. involvement, and that was none other than presidential candidate Hillary Clinton. And Hillary had that memorable quote, "We came, we saw, we kicked his ass." And then, of course, she was also probably responsible for the death of Ambassador Stevens because she was in the middle of a arms smuggling deal that was sending arms through Libya into Turkey to arm ISIS, the people that are terrorizing the Middle East now. Yes, she's complicit in that too. This is someone who's going to be a leader of this nation. She is such a low-down POS. I don't know how people in the Democrat Party could actually get behind that woman. She is just trash. I don't know how the elites could get behind her either, other than the fact that they know that she's so complicit in so many crimes that they have complete control over her, because the moment she starts to vary from their orders, they'll expose her and she's done. And that's kind of why they pick those people like that, like Hillary Clinton and Jeb Bush, the other part of Dumb and Dumber. They pick people like that to back and to finance because they know that there's so many skeletons in their closet they can bring them down anytime they want if they don't do what they tell them to do. So that's what they do. And anyway, I was just really kind of amazed this Christmas season working in my store. Now, this is my store. For those of you who are listening to this the first time, in my store we sell distilled spirits and wine and microbrew beers, and people have always told me this is kind of a recession-proof business. That that no matter what happens, people always drink, and that is probably true. But we saw just lots and lots of people that we normally don't see. I think people were in a very big spending mode. Our business was way up for this season. And this store that I now own was a very successful store before. It isn't just things that I did. I think that there's people are spending more money. There's more people out there looking for. I would consider alcohol a luxury purchase, and so I think there are a lot of people that don't understand the perilous situation we're in with our currency. And I think there are some people who do understand, and those are the people that took down Muammar Gaddafi. Because if that had come to pass, and there really was some kind of a petrodollar that was backed in gold, I think it eventually would have been the world trading currency for everything, because people would rather have trade in currencies that are backed by real money, other than if they had their choice between that and currencies that are backed with nothing. So anyway, that's kind of where that's at. I still think that these are some of the thoughts. I see that Vince has just joined us in the chat room. I was on his show 2 weeks ago. Very nice, his new show. It's a very nice show. It's a long format. I probably talk too much, but I don't really see any bright, silver linings in any of the dark clouds that are on the horizon for us. I really think that we can only. I think a lot of the quote unquote good news is really just whistling in the graveyard, or people making up statistics that are, I don't know how else to say, they're lies, and people. I saw this quote earlier this week. People will believe a lie because it's closer to what they want to believe than they will the truth, which is very painful sometimes to admit. So they're much more comfortable accepting a lie than accepting the truth, even though they say they want the truth. And I think that's I think that's kind of the case with the economy. The people out there, they want to believe that we're doing well, we're going to prosper, and they're still working hard, and that's probably what's holding the things together. But there's a lot of forces out there that just hard work and being productive isn't going to be enough. If these things are, our economy is leveraged, and if you understand how a lever works, if you can move the pivot point closer to the object you want to lift, you can lift far more weight than you even weigh, just properly exerting the force on that lever at the right spot. The further away you get, if you've ever had a lug nut that's stuck on your tire, you put a cheater bar on it because that gives you more leverage. It's the same kind of principle. Well, that our money is so leveraged, it won't take very much of an incident at all to kind of tip over the whole economic cart that we have. And so I'm kind of leery about everything. I mean, the Federal Reserve raised I talked about this last week. The Federal Reserve raised their interest rates a whole whopping 0.25%. And people are just giddy because the stock market didn't collapse overnight. Well, the stock market had been going down for about 2 months because they're anticipating this. So that kind of gave them some. The people at the Fed aren't stupid. They understood that the market had already sold off and taken that 0.25% raise into consideration, and it was pretty much where it was going to be. And if they hadn't raised the interest rates, the market probably would have zoomed up a little bit, only to realize, oh, wait a minute, what are we going up on? That there was no news? That's kind of just putting things off, and it would have slid back down. But there's a bigger problem here with the interest rates, and the Federal Reserve can go a little bit, but it isn't going to change the big problem. It is only it's only allowing some of the people to get out of the markets. And by the way, if any of you have money in the stock markets, I think this would be a good time to maybe look for a safer shelter for it. Maybe buy some income property if you have enough, or something. But see, someone's writing here in chat. I'm surprised the long anticipated economic collapse didn't happen this September or October. Yeah, I know. Jeff Berwick was all over this thing saying it was a Shemitah thing, and I don't think that's. I think that's this 7-year cycle stuff is probably rooted in something a lot more than just a number of days. It's economics and economic things happen because of human actions, and humans we don't behave in 7-year cycles. And so the fact that those things happened in that regularity for that period of time makes me think maybe the markets are being manipulated. I think they think that they can go so far and then they can't go further because they've kind of expanded money, the currency supply to a point where it can't be expanded anymore without the bubble bursting, and sometimes it bursts anyway. But I don't think it's something that just happens because of the lunar cycle, or there's all these people out there that have trying to make these correlations or these fancy economic theories. They're not really that fancy. They're just like go back all the way to Copernicus. There were scientists in the day that had constructed these elaborate models that would show how the planets and the sun and the Earth, and well, actually the Earth was the center of everything according to them, but it just, these elaborate models would show how the motion of all those celestial bodies could be accounted for. And they would move the way the stars and moon and the sun move in the sky. Well, Copernicus said, well, this is crap because the sun is the center of the solar system, and he had a much simpler system, which really was the truth. And for that, I believe he was excommunicated by the church, because obviously the Earth was the center of the universe. Well, anyway, I'm not sure exactly when things will fall apart. I just know that the course they're on is just not sustainable, and I think most thinking people realize that. There's a lot of people that are unthinking out there that just continue to go along their daily lives, and that probably is one of the main things that's holding everything up. Is in the meantime, the threat of I think one of the reasons that the U.S. government's continuing to excuse me, I got to clear my throat here, so I'm going to sound like I'm talking through a fog machine. Yeah, that's better. Okay, so anyway, the government relies on the income from taxation to pay interest on the debt. That's its entire purpose. And so even, they collect the funny money, but it's still that funny currency, the stuff that's been created out of thin air, is still able to purchase hard assets. And that's what they do. They collect the money, give it to the Federal Reserve as interest, and they buy hard assets with it. So they just get rich off. They create the money, loan it to the government, collect interest on the debt, and buy hard assets. It's what a scam. I mean, whoever thought of this was just brilliant, and they're able to make it complicated enough that nobody really wants to take the time to learn how they're being screwed out of their life savings. But that's how it is. So Joe Friday had a nice comment here. He said the reason why it hasn't collapsed more quickly is that they're not done stealing from us, and that's probably true. They feel that there's still more wealth to be fleeced out of the people here, one way or another, and they're going to keep this going until they've gotten every last dime they can squeeze out of us, and then they're going to collapse us. And when things collapse, it's not going to be like everybody just is wandering around the streets like zombies. It's going to be people are starving to death right away. You can go a couple weeks without eating. Most people will be able to find something to drink. It may not be healthy for them, what they're drinking, but after about a week, you're really hungry. You have a family to feed. People are going to start becoming violent, stealing from each other, and that'll go on for a short period of time, and a lot of people are going to die. That's just that. And other people say, well, I've got my gun, and I'm going to be able to protect my family. I says, well, you could probably protect them against a marauding force of 2 or 3, but what about a couple hundred? I don't know. I just think you better have some secure places where you can kind of bug out to that are off the beaten path. If it does happen, because no one's going to get in their truck and drive food to another place. They're not getting paid. No one's going to sell food to the places that distribute it now if they're not getting paid. And I don't think this turmoil and all this other stuff is going to last very long. It might only be a couple months. It could be maybe as long as a year. I think a lot of people will perish, though. And whether they're innocent or not. And some of them might be people that are now totally dependent on a system for food stamps and allocations. There won't be, even if they did get food stamps, there's nothing for them to buy. They don't have any usable skills that they could barter for what they're going to need to survive. So that's kind of a very negative outlook, but there's also a lot of positive things about this. This is once you get to this point, there's no place left to go but up. And those people who have skills that are in demand, those people that can produce things, produce things that other people want, will be able to exchange those goods for what other people want, and money will start to come into existence on the things that are most commonly traded, probably precious metals. And I think that in a short period of time, things will be kind of trending back to what we would consider a normal civilization. But I don't think we're going to escape a real painful period of time in between that. And I just hope that you find other people of like mind, that you can form alliances, mutual protection societies, or whatever. I think those are really important. It's you'll be very lucky if you're a person that is just a jack of all trades. You can do everything. You can be an electrician, a plumber, a carpenter, a car mechanic, and a farmer, and maybe a shopkeeper. Whatever skills you might have. Very rare to find somebody that can do everything. And it's good to have a group of people that have the same worldview as you do, and have a variety of skills that can be put in place, and then you can start to form your own community, and that community will be stronger by the diversity that you have in it, and this diversity of skills. And if you have a kind of a common purpose in what you're trying to accomplish, I think that things will go along fairly well. You'll be kind of like the Pilgrims when they first landed in the New World. And we talked about this at Thanksgiving. That first year, almost half of them died. It's the same kind of thing. It's just they weren't prepared. How could they be? A lot of people in the United States are not prepared. I don't know if half the people in the United States would die, but it certainly wouldn't surprise me if a third of them did, or a quarter of them did. That's in a country of 300 million people, a quarter of them is still 75 million people. That's a lot of people. And I'm not sure that that would be the number. It might be a lot less, but I mean, I think you're kind of getting where I'm going here, is that we have historical incidents that have happened that give us kind of an idea of how long it takes to get things rolling. And for the Pilgrims, they were kind of taken back. They had some ships coming in giving them supplies every once in a while, but until they could start to build themselves a life, a lot of the people that were there perished. If you go down to Jamestown in the Virginia colony, almost all the people there died. It was something like 90% of them died. There's and that was I think the first 3 shiploads totaled. It wasn't just the first people there. It was in continuing years they just didn't get the nutrition they needed to keep themselves alive. And it took them a while to discover where the fertile soil was and the plants that could give them the nutrition that would keep them healthy, and to perfect their hunting skills for the game that was available. And those things, and you're saying, well, I'm a good hunter. are you a good hunter if you're out there competing with 300 million people that are hungry and want some meat for dinner? And you say, well, I'm always able to catch lots of fish. Well, sure, yeah, there's a lot of fish that they put in the rivers and lakes so people can recreationally catch them. But if you have to go out and a lot of these places are going to be fished out right away. I mean, there's only so much protein out there, and there's a lot of people that want it. A lot of herds of elk and deer are going to be just decimated. I'm sure they will be. Who's going to enforce limits or whatever? So I just don't depend on things that probably aren't going to be there. And it doesn't take too much thinking to discover that, well, yeah, that we can't take for granted that this is going to be there. We can't take for granted that this is going to be there. You better have a plan B and a plan C and maybe even a plan D for what you're going to do. So that's the negative part. The positive thing is that when this thing collapses, we'll get rid of this terribly oppressive government, and the tyranny will be over. They will no longer have control over our lives. We'll have to be starting back, not quite at square one, but pretty close to it. But we won't be starting all the way over. We still have a lot of infrastructure remaining. We have a government constitution that was maybe not, for its time, it was an amazing document, but it obviously had some loopholes in it, some workarounds that have enabled government to grow out of control. So, that we have a base we can start on. And actually, if you go back and you really read these documents, the original Articles of Confederation that this nation was governed by for 11 years before they disbanded or discarded that and adopted the Constitution. The original Articles of Confederation were far superior to the Constitution we ended up with, and we might want to try that again. Who knows? But we have all this knowledge that we've gained from the mistakes that have been made. We have, a new beginning is not something to be scared of. We have, where I live, we have lots of people who were ready to secede from the United States because they just wanted to be free. They didn't care how much it reduced their standard of living. They just were tired of other people telling them how to live their lives and watching their friends be incarcerated for just growing a leaf. And in our prison population, we have the largest prison population in the world. And we're not even close to the largest, population country. And our prisoners, what do? They're slave labor. Slavery, they make them work for 25 cents an hour. And the prisons are run for profit. They get mad at the states and the counties that they've contracted with if they don't supply them enough prisoners. They say, hey, you're going to have to make up for this loss in income by forking over some money because you haven't supplied us with enough of a workforce for our business model to work. And so they go out there and they do some stings and whatever to get some more drug. I mean, drugs are everywhere. And you can find drugs almost every street corner in America. They just find some people with drug transactions, arrest them, put them in prison, and now they have those people are considered to be docile workers for the prison factory complex. They don't like the murderers and the rapists and the violent offenders because those people are too hard to control. They like the people that are just kind of laid back, basically marijuana smokers. So anyway, we'll be free of all that. We'll have a chance to. We have a long record of all these things that have been abuses of us. It's getting worse. A podcast. This was from the Borderless podcast. James Guzman and his co-host. James Guzman was a guest on our show this year. But they have a fabulous podcast called Borderless. And they recently had a guest on there that he'd gone through a divorce. I think I talked about this briefly last week. And in going through this divorce, there was some arguments about the custody of the son that the man and woman had together. And in order to make her case better, she knew that he was going to be moving from his parents' house to a new apartment that he had gotten. And in order to do that, he was going to transport his guns with him. And so she filed a complaint against him. She said he had threatened her or something about the custody of the child, and that he had guns and he was transporting. He was going to be on the highway moving to this place. I'm sure he has his guns with him. So he got arrested. He broke no laws, but he still got arrested. He got detained. He got tried. He was convicted, and he was sent to prison. Now, the governor of New Jersey, in the state where this happened, Chris Christie, who I don't think a lot of, at least he had the common sense to realize that this was a wrong that he could correct. And so he, two of the charges he was able to do away with, say this was wrong. He fired the judge that had been they basically got rid of that judge. One of the charges was a federal charge and couldn't be reversed, so it's still on his record that he's a felon. Well, later he was rebuilding his life, and he got offered a job in Europe working on he's a journalist. And he flew over to England to be part of this conference, and it was in preparation for starting his new career over there. And he touched down, and they started to look at his passport. And he says, "Oh, sir, you're going to have to come with us." Take him into a room. And he says, hand him a phone, and it's the U.S. consulate in London. And they're telling him that he can't stay, and they're going to issue him that this passport he's traveling under is now void. Now, he had to show that passport to get on the plane. So while he was in the air, they decided to void his passport because he had this phony felony thing, this a gun case. And so they issued him a 48-hour passport. He says, if you're smart, you'll get on a plane and get back to America, because if not, you're going to be, you're a criminal. You're traveling without permission. Well, if this could happen to this guy, who was somebody who was trying to be a law-abiding citizen, it could happen to any of us. If you make an enemy somewhere, and an ex-wife is a good place to start. I mean, it's probably people who have. There's that old quote: "Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned." Well, I think this guy could probably speak to that. But you should listen to that podcast. It's an amazing story. I think I would not listen to it with children present, because there's some F-bombs that go off in that. Both James and his co-host were sampling some mezcal prior to the show, and I think they were a little relaxed. But they were still very clear thinking, and it was excellent, really excellent radio. And despite the cursing, I think it was really appropriately used. I didn't have any objection to it at all. I just don't think everybody would want to have their children listen to that. So if you're going to tune into that, you might be aware that you've been forewarned. Anyway, it's getting tougher and tougher and tougher to leave this country. And I'm reminded of my friend Edward, who left Poland while it was still under communist rule. And he was not allowed to take anything with him when he left. Just had his ticket and his passport, and that was it. And so he and his wife, they sewed money into the linings of their garments and the shoes, and they were able to get out of Poland with about $700 cash. But even if they'd have been caught, they'd have taken that too. They weren't going to let them get away with anything. I see a day coming when the United States will be that way as well. And if you're going to leave, it means that you're going to have to start over somewhere because you're not going to be able to take any assets with you. And so for that reason, I think it's a good time to start looking into offshore bank accounts. Bitcoin offers you a chance to store wealth and have it easily transferred around the world. Now, a lot of people are uncomfortable with the volatility of Bitcoin, and I certainly understand that. But it's probably a quick and easy way to move money. It's not foolproof, and it's not without risk. So you should do your own research on that and kind of learn as much as you can about it before you start to get involved with that. But that's one way you could do it. At this point in time, I believe you're able to travel with up to $10,000 worth of gold without it being confiscated. Cash is also still up to, I think 10,000 is kind of their magic number. But I want you to know that even if you have less than that, there are people working for the TSA who are they've arrested and imprisoned over 400 TSA agents since the inception of that organization. There's an outside chance that you could have someone steal your stuff from you right there at the check-in place. So anyway, so you might start thinking, plan. You have your life plan, but you might want to have a fallback plan B and yet another plan C and plan D. And you should have places to live, places to keep your money, maybe a second passport to allow you to travel without, the United States Embassy being notified every time you move. For good or for bad, they have the most powerful military force on the planet, and everybody cowers in their presence, and they pretty much do what they say. I don't think any nation's willing to lose their own native sons to protect you if you're an expat trying to make a life somewhere else. So just keep those thoughts in mind. And I think I've heard other people say this, but I think John Berwick may have been the first person to coin this phrase. He said that, Jeff Berwick. I said John Berwick. Jeff Berwick. I'm sorry, Jeff. It's better to be 5 years too early than 1 day too late. And you should be planning right now. You should be finding the place where you want to live. I mean, you don't want to just be forced to take the first port in the storm when things start to break apart. You want to already be somewhere, have an established life, and have all these different contingencies taken care of. Anyway, we still have 20 minutes left, and I wanted to talk a little bit about Christmas in the remaining 20 minutes. And one of the reasons I love having a retail store is you meet so many interesting people, and there's a lot to be learned from other people, especially if they've come from another country. And I was really honored to be able to help a woman who came in the store this week, and she's a native of Peru. And in Chile and Peru, they have a drink they make from grapes. I guess it's called pisco, and it's kind of like a brandy. And they make a drink with this pisco and egg whites and I don't know what they put in it. It's lime or lemon, I think, lemon juice. It's really good. And so anyway, we had some because I'm interested. the name of my store is Spirits World. So I like to have things from all over the world in my store. And I had 3 different kinds of pisco that were there, and she recognized one of them as a Chilean pisco that they sell in Peru. She was looking for one from Peru, and I didn't have one. I was a little bit disappointed I didn't. But we ended up having this fabulous conversation about what Christmas was like in Peru. And she says, well, first of all, we celebrate Christmas on Christmas Eve. People don't have trees, but almost everybody has in their house a creche or a manger scene. They have the shepherds and the wise men and the sheep and the cattle and all that sort of thing. They're all there in the stable, and Mary and John. And then precisely at midnight, they take the baby Jesus and they put baby Jesus in the manger. And then everybody goes on and celebrates a little bit, and they eventually go to sleep and wake up the next day on Christmas, and they exchange presents, and they a lot of them go to church. And it was it was a really interesting conversation about how, because of the way they practice their or the tradition of Christmas, it is continually reinforcing this idea of we're honoring the birth of the Son of God. And they did it as a family. They didn't, the families weren't working so hard in stores and out doing whatever to try and make money. So they buy more presents. They were trying to, they would exchange things that are simple things, that maybe handmade things. Or the main thing was just to get together to worship and to bring your family together and to share those things that are common beliefs that they had. And and I think about this and I think, wow, this is just so powerful that it'd be such a uniting force that it helps people to put their life in a perspective where they're able to judge it against this. I don't know how to say this. I'm for once I'm at a loss for words, but they're judging against the birth of the Christ child, and it helps them to measure their life in a different way. So they suddenly the difference between right and wrong becomes more real. The moral and immoral, and the 10 Commandments, and everything in the Bible it brings all of those things to mind as they look at their own lives, and it helped people to lead a more moral and upstanding life. And she compared that to the way we do it in America, where we just, I want this for Christmas, I want that for Christmas, and it's a materialistic grab bag, and it's people, I want, instead of really what Christmas is supposed to be about, is celebrating the birth of the Son of God. Now, there's a lot of other people say, well, they only celebrated it at this time of year because it was they were trying to compete with a Druid festival that was at the end of the year. This is when the days become the shortest, but so they'd be celebrating the fact that the days were starting to become longer, and they'd have a celebration till the New Year, or they'd call it the New Year. And so they started celebrating Christmas at that time, so they could compete with this other activity that was going on. And that's probably true. But if you look at the way they probably started to celebrate, it's probably what gave them the strength to prevail and attracted more and more followers to this belief system, is that because it was strengthening them in their lives, and they really would be people that other people would admire and respect. And they'd say, I want this thing that you have, and they'd want to also become Christians. I mean, kind of contrast this against the way the Muslims would attract people to their religions, was convert or I'm going to chop your head off. Well, so which is also effective. But those people were not going to benefit from all of a sudden declaring their fealty to a religion that's based on violence and coercion. So, and I think over time they realized that that was not a good way to recruit members either, and Islamic religion became more peaceful and more inward-looking. And it's only these, I would call them the radical madrasa output that the Saudis fund that have become the problem. And everywhere around the Muslim world, they kill far more Muslims than they kill Christians or Jews, despite what you hear on their TV. And they're really a threat for evil everywhere in the world, and that they don't represent the majority of people of Muslim faith. And so I just I want to also think about Christmas in terms of, we shouldn't be worried about things that have no meaning, or the meanings are not for us to decide. We should focus on our own lives and what we can do to improve our own lives, and how we can be better people. And I think that if you look at the life of Jesus, Son of God, there's a lot of good lessons to be learned there, both from his teachings and his life, and the disciples that were touched by him, and how they carried on their lives after he was gone, and how he was able to change someone like Paul, who used to be called Saul, and then he was blinded by the light, literally. And when he was able to see again, he started calling himself Paul, and he actually wrote most of the New Testament, which is amazing. And so, I don't want to get into biblical matters because I'm not very expertise. We should have David on the show to talk about this stuff. David is a Bible student, or a student of the Bible. He knows much more than I do. But still, the thing about Christmas that is special, and what it represents, is that a special child was born, and it was supposed to be Son of God. The Mary was supposed to have immaculate conception. It was a virgin birth. Something that isn't possible unless you're a God that's capable of doing anything. All powerful, all present everywhere. So, this Son of God was sent because we were imperfect people and we couldn't seem to live the way we had been set out to live. I believe that we were given free will, and we're not using that very well. And today we can see a lot of evidence of that. Even people who are deep in the Christian community. I don't attend church regularly just because there are too many people that are there because they're hedging their bets. They don't really have faith. They just in case there is a God, I want to make sure that I'm a church-going Christian. That type of people. There are people that are there because they want to force their will on other people. That certainly isn't a Christian thing to do. There's lots of things about people like that rub me the wrong way, but I try not to dwell on that. I try and dwell on the positive parts of religion. I still read my Bible all the time. I tend to read my favorite parts over and over and over again, and one of my favorite parts is the Proverbs, which was originally written, it's part of the Old Testament, was written for young men. And here I am, an old dude, and I still enjoy reading. I think there's a lot of wisdom there, a lot of good rules for life, and there's a lot of these are things that were written 4,000 years ago, and they're still very valid. They still make sense. And I think that they must be pretty close to exactly the truth, because things that have falsehoods in them are, they don't last very long before those falsehoods are exposed and people can see them, and they have life experiences that negate them. So it's that's one of my favorite books, the Bible. I like to read that a lot. And when I coached basketball at the Christian high school where I was at, we used to spend quite a bit of time talking, because these were young men. This was written for young men, and we'd have a portion of every practice devoted to one of the, a small portion of the book of of this book of the Bible, and I think that was awesome. I think it was very productive. It helped those young men keep a sense of purpose in what they were doing. I mean, they were playing basketball. It's a game, and they were being allowed to do this as a way to learn to work together. There's a lot of positive things about sports sometimes if you do it properly. So they were learning how to put a plan into action, how to work together, and all these different things. And then we would read part of this. We'd read from the Bible, and we would relate that to what they were doing on the basketball court. And I thought that was really, really fun part of the whole deal. It made me feel like I was giving something of importance to these young men, more than just my knowledge about basketball or my observations of how to technically play a better game and how to strategically overcome what someone else was trying to do, and these types of things. It was really more important to, relate what they're learning on the basketball court to how they can be successful in life. And that's kind of what Christmas should be about. Is we should be looking at the lessons of the birth of Christ, and these things relate to how we live our life. And I'm not trying to proselytize or make everybody out there into a Christian. Certainly people are free to believe what they want to believe. And if you have your doubts, I certainly would say if you're involved with any number of modern churches that are out there, there's a lot of reasons to be doubtful for the validity of that. But I think if you step away from that a little bit and immerse yourself in the Word of God, I think you'll find that there's an awful lot of good there. There's an awful lot of things there that can really help you with your life, and there's an awful lot of things that are important about it. And you may even come to see that, deep down inside me, I think I really do believe there is a God. One such man that he had serious doubts. He was a skeptic. It was a man named C.S. Lewis. You probably have heard of him. He's the Book of Narnia and all that. But he started out to disprove the existence of God, and he ended up being a fervent Christian. He really believed. He's very reverent about it. He wrote a couple of great books. One was Screw Tape Letters, where he's kind of an argument with the devil. And the other one was, I can't remember it. Oh. Hang on, it's over on my bookshelf. I'll go peek. I'll cheat here and peek out. It was called Mere Christianity, and that's a fabulous book. So those of you who aren't sure if we believe or not, or maybe wonder what C.S. Lewis' song is. By the way, C.S. Lewis was like a genius's genius. Well over 160 IQ. He had, he had a great mind, and he was very seriously a doubter that, God existed in any form, but let alone a Christian God. But in researching and developing, just using logic and reading the true accounts of things that happened, he became a believer. And it was this is somebody that was trying to disprove God that ended up proving it to himself. And I think that is kind of that whole thing of the birth of Christ and the Christmas. And it's not just for Christians. It's not just for those who want to go to church. It's for believers and non-believers and every person that walks on this earth, that God didn't send Jesus just for the Christians. There wasn't any such thing as Christianity then. He sent it for mankind, and it's for mankind. It's for those who want to reach out and to find this peace in their lives, direction and meaning and truth. And I think if we were more inclined to stop and pause and really celebrate Christmas for the right reasons, then we might not find ourselves in this predicament we find ourselves, where the world's collapsing in on itself because maybe we were just violating some of those commandments about coveting and putting other things before God and so on and so forth. And we weren't living a life that was prescribed. We weren't living our life for the right reasons. We were living our lives for reasons that aren't full of truth, and because of that, we run afoul and we have problems, and that's how it is. So, for all my ramblings tonight, I thank everybody in chat for listening, and I hope I didn't come across as too much of a preaching at you, but I think that it's Christmas is always kind of a special time for me, just because I get a day off for one. But I really want to be philosophical about these things. And this woman that came in my store this week, and it really helped me to focus my thoughts on. So we're a busy time of year for us, but it really helped me focus my thoughts on the things that I think are important in my life. And one of them is this show. I think that there's a lot of truth out there that we're being denied. And when I find out something new, that I want to share it with everybody out there that wants to listen. And I hear the music, so I'm going to be gone for another week. But I will see you next Thursday, which will be New Year's Eve, and this will be I may pre-record this. No, I'm going to be here live. And then after the show, we're going to have a party. So I might have some the pre-partiers here next week. So see you then. Bye-bye.